So I've been working on the rudder stiffeners. They start out as 7 long pieces like this. You cut them in half to make left and right halves, so there's 7 pairs. So you cut them in half, and then depending on which one you're making, you mark it. You measure back from a certain hole, depending on which pair you're making. Mark them, and then cut them and discard. I've shaded this area just to show. So you mark them, cut them, discard that part, and then you also mark and cut off and discard this little section to basically continue that angle there all the way to the tip. So you do that for the left and the right halves, and again, depending on which length you're building, the A pair, I'll say, basically you just cut it in half, and don't really have to cut back anymore. The B, you go from the next hole, 1/4 inch out. C is 1/4 inch out from the next hole. The D, which is the one I'm about to do now, is a 1/4 inch, this side of this hole. Work your way back, and so that accounts for the taper as the rudder, more toward the top part of the rudder. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show one, so I'll cut this on the bandsaw. Probably, cut it on that side of the line by a good bit, and then on the bandsaw, and then come back and grind it down with the belt sander to the line. Same thing here. Cut that off and shape it with the belt sander and a file, and then I'll clean things up a little further on the 3M wheel and deburr, and that'll be it. I'll have another pair of rudder stiffeners. So that's what I'm going to do. So the first thing I do actually is go ahead and mark the other one, because I'm going to do both left and right halves. Marking with a Sharpie, a super fine Sharpie. So if you mess up and you need to erase a mark, just a paper towel with a little acetone. So that's what's in the foreground there. So I'll confess, the cuts I make with the bandsaw, I don't tend to try to make the most precise cuts in the world. I usually stay well away from the line, or at least give myself plenty of margin. The bandsaw blade doesn't make the cleanest cuts in the world anyway on this real thin aluminum. So I'm gonna want to leave. I want to leave enough margin to be able to clean it up on the sander and then the 3M wheel. So and or a file or whatever the case may be. I suppose if I had a finer tooth bandsaw blade, the finest I could find was 24 teeth per inch, but if anyone could tell me where to get something finer, that would make a nicer cut. All right. So you can see it's dark outside in the background there. That's one of the things that's been nice about getting back to some of these steps where it's kind of a smaller step. When I was working on the last few steps of the vertical stabilizer, where I was riveting big sections of skin and things like that, that tends to be a multi-hour weekend project, and I enjoy that. But then it's nice to be able to come down on a weeknight, after work or after dinner, and do just a little bit, make 1 or 2 stiffeners, and make progress in little steps. So that you can see in the background, I had already done 3 sets of these, and on an earlier evening, and so that is kind of nice. So what I'm doing there is double checking the measurement, and then also checking to make sure that that I'm keeping it square as I'm grinding away. So the 3M wheel is nice, but I do find that it's easier to break off the little nubs or little bumps every few inches that you find that are on the edge of the skin and some of these real thin parts that are created, when the parts manufactured by vans, it's just easier to get those off with a file. A couple of swipes of the file breaks those right off. And sometimes I forget and I start using the wheel, and then I kind of remember and go back and hit them with the file. All right, so that's one. Okay, so all right, so that'll be one. In there. So yeah, just doing a little more deburring with Scotch-Brite pad, getting in some of the areas that you can't really get into with the wheel very easily, like that inner radius that I pointed out. And then I'm also making sure, for example, areas where the parts overlap, like where the left stiffener overlaps the right, I want to make sure there's no sharp areas that are going to scratch the part below it. Okay, so we got left and right stiffeners, and I'm going to Cleco these together just so that it's painfully obvious how this works. Turns out only one of these holes is going to get a rivet anyway. I think it's the back one that is just for Clecoing together when you're assembling. And then, so this was the D. I think I said that before. And this is the D shear clip. So, that's the way the two stiffeners and the shear clip form, what is basically going to be a rib of the rudder. So I've already got 3 more that I've done. Yep. And so you can see how each one, see how the size. This is A, it'll be down at the bottom of the rudder, well, just above the bottom outer rib. B will be above that. C will be above that. And D above that. So, each one gets a little smaller as you go up. Stack them on the Clecos here. That'll be cool. All right, yeah, so obviously it'll be a lot taller than that, but, that's the idea with the rudder stiffeners and the shear clips. The spar will be here, trailing edge will be here, skin, and that's the deal. So you end up back riveting these to the skin, and then essentially sort of folding the whole thing together and riveting these with line rivets as you go, and work your way up. So, a long way from that, but I'm going to keep working on these stiffeners. So, there's about 10 more seconds of ultra high speed before the camera battery died. I did finish all of them that night, and here's what they look like. And here's another shot with the bottom and top ribs at the bottom and top of the stack, just to show the shape of the rudder.